Hi everybody, I am here today for the first in a whole series. I think there's going to be at least 7 of these videos, maybe more, because there may be more people coming out that want to talk. But today we have Dr. Kayla Daniel. Hi Kayla, welcome to the show.
Hi, Anne-Marie.
It's good to have you on. We've been friends for a long time over the years, and you know, you're the one that really instigated this whole thing, this whole fermented cod liver oil scandal. And I just want to say, to start this, that I really appreciate your bravery. Because whether or not people agree or disagree, or, whether or not any of that, the facts in the report, we can argue over all that. Bottom line, though, it is a brave thing to do, to put yourself out there and to question the status quo.
Well, thank you. A whole lot of people in the Weston A. Foundation community have been aware of these problems for a long, long time, but it's been a well-kept secret, and nobody has had the guts to bring it up with Sally, because she just has not been willing to consider the possibility that there might be a problem with the green pasture products.
Now, because I've been so involved for so many years, and it wasn't just my hobby, it was built my whole business around it and went to every single conference and everything. I can vouch for that. I definitely saw that. I definitely saw there were problems brought up years and years ago, and people were talking about it. So that's why I really wanted to do this video series, so that people could hear it from the horse's mouth, as it were. Not to insult you, but I mean like everybody, Dr. Ron, everybody that's been involved in this. Because, we don't have the luxury of all living close to each other. We are kind of like a tribe. We're like a big extended family, like a community. If we lived in a village, we would just all gather around and have a meeting.
We would.
But we can't do that. And so this way, all the members and all the people involved can hear it from you. So I think it's great that we have this modern day technology that allows us to do this. Before we start, though, there's going to be a lot of people watching this video that are not in our little tribe or haven't been. And they don't know much about you, and they don't know who you are, what your background is. So can you just give us a little information about your credentials and your education?
Yes, I'm Dr. Kayla Daniel. I have a PhD in nutritional sciences, and my brand is the Naughty Nutritionist, because I tell the truth that's too hot to handle. And recently, the truth that I was telling was what the evidence is on fermented cod liver oil. And that is a product that has been heavily endorsed by Sally Fallon Morell and the Weston A. Foundation, and members have been taking it. It's been considered a sacred food. And I noticed there seemed to be a lot of problems with the product. I was hearing stories of people who thought they were harmed by it. I was seeing evidence that suggested rancidity and putrefaction and other problems. So I decided to look into it. And I've got a background as a PhD in nutritional sciences, as I said, and on my doctoral committee was Dr. Mary Enig, and she was one of the founding members of the Weston A. Foundation, and a brilliant, and very courageous woman who first exposed the dangers of trans fats. And she was not popular for that expose that she did, and I cannot imagine that she would like this rancid product. And it came on the market after she basically became inactive.
Mary Enig, so she, didn't she write, was she no, she wasn't the co-author of Nourishing Traditions, was she?
Yes, she was.
She was.
And for many years, she was Sally's co-author and her science advisor. And Mary Enig is absolutely the best as a science advisor, and I was very honored and privileged to have her on my doctoral committee looking after me, training me.
Well, and you really took after Mary, Dr. Mary Enig, in the sense that, you went on to Right, the whole soy story, which is I remember reading that book when I first got involved with the Weston Price Foundation several years ago, and just absolutely loved it. Just thought it was brilliant, and you just were so thorough, and took on this huge health food, and really explained why it wasn't so much of a health food the way we're consuming it. It's one thing if you, like you, I heard you on an interview once and you said, it's one thing if you eat a little bit of soy, but if you're guzzling soy milk, that was never done before. So I just thought, wow, this lady is really sharp. She's very well researched. That book is extremely well researched. And then you went on to win the Weston Price Award for Science.
Yeah, I won the Integrity in Science Award in 2005, and that was really the happiest day of my life, professionally at least. And of course, as many people know at this point, I have now been removed from the Weston A. Price Foundation's board because of the same kind of science and the same kind of integrity that led to the Integrity in Science Award. And the saddest day of my life was when I realized that the Weston A. Price Foundation, a group that I had supported and contributed to for years, was guilty of the same kinds of cover up and paid for science that the soy industry was. So this was very sad, realizing that there were those problems in-house.
So Kayla, you'd been hearing stories, people were talking to you, you were very concerned from hearing all these different stories, because you're the vice president of the organization. People are going to talk to you. And it's got to be kind of scary hearing from people telling you that they're taking the fermented cod liver oil and it's making them sick.
It was, and as vice president of the Weston A. Price Foundation, I had felt personally responsible. I felt we needed to investigate it. I felt that the scientific credibility of the foundation and the safety of our members were both at stake. I thought it was very, very important that it could not be ignored. And I brought it up with Sally Fallon Morell last October, and let's just say my concerns were not well received. I was told to go to David Wetzel, that he would straighten me out, that he would educate me. And that's really like saying, go to Monsanto if you've got concerns about GMOs, and they'll reassure you and set you straight.
Right. Because for those who don't know, David Wetzel is the owner of Green Pasture Products, and Green Pasture Products is the only company in the entire world making fermented cod liver oil.
That's right. The other companies saw that he was doing a good business, and they investigated doing that process themselves. They tested his oil, and competing companies do that. Samsung will check out the next, the Apple phone that comes out.
Right.
It's what companies do. So they were testing the fermented cod liver oil, and they were saying, I don't believe this product. It's the most rancid marine oil I have ever tested. And there were many, many people who did that kind of testing, and I talked to many of those scientists at labs all over the world, U.S., Canada, Norway, and so forth.
Well, maybe that's really interesting, because I kind of wondered before, like, he doesn't have any competitors, really, for fermented. And everybody says fermented is the best and blah, blah, blah. But if you think about it, maybe that's why he doesn't have any competitors.
They looked at the product and they said, no way will we touch this. We're not interested. We cannot do this to our customers.
Why?
Because they were aware of the dangers of rancidity and putrefaction, health dangers of those. There's a huge literature about the dangers of rancid polyunsaturated oils, and those fragile omega-3s there's a lot of them in fish oils and fish liver oils. Mm. And they're linked to heart disease, cancer, reproductive problems, you name it.
Right.
They will basically bollocks your whole system, every single cell membrane, every metabolic pathway in your body. You do not want to be taking rancid oils.
Right. And we all know that. I mean, even Sally said that.
Yes, the Weston A. Price Foundation website has articles about the dangers of rancid polyunsaturates, but somehow they've come up with this whole idea that the rancid oils in the fermented cod liver oil are a special, unique, sacred form of rancidity that no one has scientifically identified yet.
Okay.
Makes no sense to me.
So you had doubts, and you were hearing all this stuff, and I'm sure it got to be like a drum beat, like, what do I do here? And so you went to Sally, and this was when?
Last October.
So about a year ago. And what did she say exactly? Because you said she kind of shut you down, but like, what did she say?
She shut me down. She told me to talk to David Wetzel, that other people had brought up that sort of nonsense before, that it was all coming from competitors, that it was libelous, that it was slander, that it was inaccurate, that it was just people who didn't understand Dave's unique product.
Okay. And so, and was that at the board meeting, or that was private?
That was before that, a couple months before the board meeting.
Okay. But you still had concerns. They weren't going away. You were still hearing stories, right?
The more I investigated, the more concerns I had, actually. And I talked to a lot of people. When I talked to fishermen, I learned there were things that were not making sense with what Dave was describing about the fishing operations and about cod. When I talked to marine oil experts, I learned about concerns about rancidity. When I talked about, also talking, say, to olive oil companies, the small companies that have olive oil. These are people who know when the smell and taste and color is not right. When I talked to people who are experts on fermentation, none of them could figure out what the heck he's doing, how his process works. And many of them had talked with him at conferences out of curiosity, not out of competition, curiosity. Also, a lot of homemakers who like to have all the bubblies going on their countertops. They wanted to know, say, if I bought a cod liver, can I ferment that? How would I do that? And the answers he was giving people, very vague, not making sense. The fermentationists, these were people who'd studied the whole science, who'd studied it for years. They said his answers were evasive, they're vague, they didn't add up. So whatever area I investigated, I found that the experts in the field did not feel that David Wetzel's answers made sense.
That's not good.
Not good.
Before we get into it, your report, the hook, line, and stinker, which I thought was so cute. A lot of what I'm hearing out there, and it really concerns me, not only as a woman, but just as a human being, a lot of people are saying, they didn't like your tone. That they were saying, if she hadn't written in this way, maybe we'd listen. Or why does she have to be so divisive with our community? So two things. One is I would like you to address that line of people arguing against you. And then number two, I would like to ask you, answer that first, and then I'll ask you the other question.
Well, I come from a journalism background years ago, an investigative reporter. I learned how to write in a popular, appealing style. And my brand is the Naughty Nutritionist, so I like to be entertaining, or as some people say, educational and entertaining, or edutaining. Mm-hmm. So that's my style. Mm-hmm. And I definitely didn't resist the chance for a good title like Hook, Line, and Stinker, or some subtitles like Something Fishy. Mm-hmm. But the report is actually pretty straight, and it tells the science in a very clear way that people can read comfortably and make sense of. And the beginning of the report, though, which is what I think offended some people the most, is actually where I was quoting many people online. People who are using words like, God help me, that stuff is nasty, or it's brown and it stinks, and expressions like that, which people who are fans of the product found very offensive. Mm-hmm. But the fact is, there was no shortage of people talking about the product like that, and I've got a long file of quotes taken from one site after another, as well as Amazon reviews, and I quoted them, and I actually listed them in the endnotes. And, another thing that was funny is I was criticized for using as references the bloggers. Well, the bloggers I was referencing were the ones who were using expressions like, that stuff is nasty, that stuff is rotten, my child is puking from this. That was not my writing, it was taken from many other people who've talked that way.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good part of it. And I don't think a lot of people read the whole report. And it's typical online when one person will say something and everybody else repeats it, and before long it sounds like the truth.
Yeah, I know. I went through that. My other question is this, before we get into the report. It's that, people say you've got some motive. Well, I mean, first of all, how long have you been involved with the Weston Price Foundation? How many years?
For years and years, and a very treasured part of my life. I was with the foundation when Sally started it up as a writer for the journal, and then I started working on the soy project, and Sally, through her publishing company, New Trends, published the whole soy story, the dark side of America's favorite health food. I've been a speaker, I joined the honorary board, and then I was promoted to the main board, and in 2011 I became vice president as Mary Enig had retired. So long history, a lot of meaningful work that I did there, a lot of serving. And as for motive, I can't think of a better way I could damage my life in the last few months, for the last year. I worked on that project for 9 months with no one paying for me. And knowing the whole time that it was going to be an explosion, knowing that I would almost certainly be removed from the board, knowing that I'd be in the middle of a big controversy. And this is not what I want. I want to help educate people in a way that's fulfilling for me and entertaining for them. I want to be more a sharer of good news. But yet this was something I truly felt had to go public. I just, as vice president of the foundation, I could not let members continue to take this believing it had been properly tested, that it was safe and it was sacred food and going to benefit their health. And particularly because it's being pushed for babies. The amount in the baby formula is a high dose for a little baby. It's being promoted with pregnant women, babies, people who are sick. I could go on. And it's just not right.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Okay. Well, it is the Integrity in Science Award that you won. And I think integrity is where, people can count on you for your word.
Thank you.
And that, and I think that's what we always believed with the Weston Price Foundation, having been a chapter leader, having been a member for myself for several years. I think that's really what's so shocking to people and so horrifying to people, that this organization that you could rely on, now maybe you can't.
Well, in terms of the science of the organization, when Mary Enig was there, it was impeccable science. But now there's a whole lot of pendulum swinging and dowsing rods and energetic testing of one sort or another, and people saying, we know it's a good product, we just need to find the right labs to test it so the results will accord with the way we think about it. And in terms of the energetic testing, they're all pushing it, but Sally's saying, but we can't tell anyone that. Well, I'm telling it now.
What's energetic testing? What are you talking about? I haven't heard about that.
I'm talking about swinging pendulums.
Really?
Yes. And that's getting into the land of woo-woo and so forth. Now, I want to be clear. I have a strong interest in frontier science myself. But the thing about pendulum testing or any form of energetic testing is it's very important for the person doing the testing to be blind and be objective. Because subjectivity, if you think the product is good or you think the product is bad, it's going to affect how the test results come out. Mm-hmm. So they have not been doing it in a way that would eliminate the subjectivity problem.
Okay. All right. Where do I want to go here? We want to go right into the report. Let's get into it. Let's just get right into the report. So, For those of you who want to get it, you can go to KaylaDaniel.com.
DrKaylaDaniel.com.
DrKaylaDaniel.com. I hate it. I always want to call doctors because you guys work so hard. Whether you're a PhD or, a medical doctor, it's like you don't want to deprive you of your title. You work so hard for that. DrKaylaDaniel.com. You can go there and download the free report and read it yourself. And I recommend everybody read it if you're interested in this. Take the time and read it. Don't just make up your mind or go online and write a bunch of comments, actually take the time. Kayla, like you said, spent 9 months. Oh, and you didn't say this, but I'll say it. This has substantially negatively impacted your income.
Absolutely. I just cannot believe the people accusing me of making a lot of money from, say, affiliate fees and so forth. If I was making affiliate commissions on a competitor's cod liver oil or fish liver oil, I might be making $50 a month tops. Mm-hmm. And if you go to my website, DrKaylaDaniel.com, you'll find no cod liver oil or fish liver oil products whatsoever in my store there or with the resources. And certainly no one has paid me. And I did get funding for the laboratory testing. And it was amazing how people were willing to step up and contribute once they understood that what was holding me back initially was the cost of testing. Mm-hmm. Because it cost close to $10,000 to do the testing that I actually did. And all the data is in the report. And I accepted money only from people who agreed to my terms, which were I will publish the data, whatever it turns out. I will discuss it as I see fit, and no one is going to censor it, edit it, or control it in any way. Mm-hmm. And everyone agreed to those conditions. And in fact, everybody wanted those conditions. They wanted the truth to come out. They trusted me to do that. And some of the people did think it was rancid, and they expected I'd find that out. And other people like Dr. Ron Schmid, he really wanted me to find out that it was a good, healthy product, nutrient dense and fresh and not rancid. That's what he wanted me to find out because he was selling a lot of it over the years, and it represented 20% of his income. And for me, in terms of my income, about a third of my income came from the Weston A Foundation, not as a board member, which was volunteer, but from blogging, from speaking, from some PR work and similar things. And that was a substantial part of my income. And yes, I'm really hurting from the loss of that income.
And you have children.
I have 2 children, yes.
And you're supporting those children.
I'm supporting those children, single mom supporting those children. And this is a big hit for me financially.
Yeah. So, okay, that aside, one of the issues people brought up about the report, before I actually get into the data, is the labs being blacked out. People said that the report was not even worth looking at because of that issue. What do you say to that?
That makes me very sad. A lot of people said that was a red flag for them, and a good lab would be proud to have its name on there. But this is not true. Almost all laboratories require you to sign a waiver. You cannot publish the full reports online with their names and everything. And to do so, you actually need to pay considerably more, and it would have to do with basically chain of custody. Say they would buy the product, they would know they would have handled the product being tested, etc. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, and none of these laboratories want to take the risk that somebody's sending in a tampered with product and then posting results that are not accurate.
And you mentioned that there were a number of different people who helped finance this report and pay for it. You're not at liberty to disclose all those people, and I'm guessing it's because a number of them don't want to be named because this is such a hot topic issue. I mean, it's right.
Yeah, it's very controversial, and all of the people who contributed were loyal members of the Weston A Foundation. Many were close friends of Sally. They did not want to be publicly involved with my testing. They thought it should be done, but they didn't want their names revealed. And the reason is They were afraid they would no longer be asked to be speakers at the Weston Prize conferences. They were afraid they'd no longer be writing for the journal. They thought they would be booted out as chapter leaders. And they thought in some way they would be the subjects of retaliation or blacklisting or excommunication. And originally, I think a lot of people might have thought that was paranoia, that nothing like that would ever happen. But we now know that chapter leaders have been kicked out. Speakers have been taken off the schedule for Anaheim, quite a few. And so it goes. So these people, they had a good reason for wanting their names kept confidential. And Dr. Ron, he has gone public. He was a major funder. And as I said, he really wanted me to find results different from what I did find. And he had a hard time dealing with those results initially. It was very challenging for him. But he stepped up to do the right thing, which was to stop selling the green pasture products, and that meant a loss of 20% of his business.
Okay, yeah. All right, let's get into it. The actual data in the report, what did you think when you looked into all this? You sent off the samples. It was 5 different independent labs, and then you said 9 reports.
Actually, the final version had 10 reports, and the reason it was more reports than labs is say if one lab, for example, would test both the green pasture fermented cod liver oil and test the green pasture butter oil. But I separated those pages because it was very confusing for them all to be together.
Okay.
So that's one of the reasons.
And then how
there were two reports in there where I disclosed that it was data from samples that someone else had sent in, that I had every reason to believe that the results were accurate, but I had not personally bought the product and sent it in myself.
Okay. And then how did you choose all these different labs?
I spent several months actually looking into what would be the right laboratories for different tests. For example, if you want to test vitamin D, one lab might be the best in that. If you're looking for rancidity testing, another lab would be best. And then if you're getting into DNA testing for authenticity, which would be answering the question, is it really cod? Then there'd be another lab for that. And so it goes. So after a lot of investigation, I came up with the labs that I used, and they're very well known. And they include labs like Covance and Eurofins and Sterling and Syntef and Maastricht for vitamin K testing, and some of the very best labs in the world, highly respected. But I want to be clear that with the results, what came out, the results actually match up pretty closely to some of the results that David Wetzel himself had posted on his website. So it's not really a question of more laboratory testing is needed, that we need more data. It's a question of how you're analyzing that data, which is another whole issue. For example, all the marine oil experts I talk to think high free fatty acids and a high acid value are markers of advanced rancidity. David Wetzel and Sally Fallon Morell are saying instead that it's not rancidity, or at least it's not their sacred form of rancidity. It's pre-digestion or enzymatic breakdown or something that they are framing in a positive way. It's the turning of devils into angels. With the soy business, phytates for years and years were a problem with soy because phytates block mineral absorption. So the soy industry can't solve the phytate problem, so instead they say phytates are good and they can prevent cancer and heart disease. Well, it's the same thing. Green Pasture and Sally Fallon Morell have turned devils into angels.
Okay. What would you say? Well, I didn't get to cover this, so I want to go backtrack just a minute and say, like, so when you went to the board meeting, because that was the other criticism I heard of you, was that, well, we didn't see any reason for have her do this. We didn't see any reason to have to do more testing. We'd already done testing. We had and they named, whatever labs they had worked with. So when you went to the board meeting, how did that go? How did that play out? And why did they not think this was an issue?
Well, first of all, they were all busy swinging their pendulums or saying they'd swung their pendulums and the pendulums wagged the right way so that they knew the product was good and not rancid. But since they weren't going to admit their pendulum swinging publicly, they did rely on certain tests. Now, there's several that had actually been done. Now, Green Pasture for many years had done testing. It's something companies do, and they had. And they said it's not rancid based on the fact that the peroxide levels are low. In fact, the peroxide levels are really low. That's something I found out too. But the thing about peroxide value is it's a good marker of initial rancidity, but it's a poor marker of advanced rancidity. So at the point the Green Pasture fermented cod liver oil has been bottled and gone to market, the peroxide level has already peaked and it's gone down, it's flatlined. But that doesn't mean the rancidity is dead and it's over and it's not a problem. It means it's a more advanced form, and we can tell what that is from free fatty acids and acid value. So those showed very high, both by David Wetzel's own tests and the tests that I did and that others have done as well, markedly high. And some marine oil experts have said this oil is so rancid it's ready to be you can paint your house with it.
Wow. And how serious is rancid oil, Kayla?
It is not good. We don't want it. We don't want to consume it.
I know we've been hearing all these reports of the different health problems, but what are the diseases that are most commonly associated with consumption of rancid oils?
Well, you name it. There's probably no disease where rancid oils do not make it worse. It's connected with cancer, with heart disease, with digestive problems, with many, many problems, including brain fog and just many problems. You name it. You do not want rancid oils. You want to minimize them as much as possible.
And one of the things you said in the report is, or at least on the post when you download the report, you said, if you have experiences with this product, send them to me. And since you posted, I know you heard a lot of stories prior to doing the report, and after you published the report, did you hear a lot more stories of health problems from the cod liver oil?
Absolutely. A lot of people have contacted me, and I promised that I would do free mini consultations or chats with anybody who was interested. And I've gotten so many requests that I'm having a hard time catching up, but I'm getting close. And a lot of people have emailed me as well. And Dr. Ron's story of near death from heart failure, of course, attracted a whole lot of interest. And many, many of the stories have come in, speaking of heart arrhythmias, for example. And of course, with people, there's many dietary and lifestyle factors, so it can be very hard to prove cause and effect.
Sure.
But these people were saying that they started taking the product, and somewhere around then they started having heart arrhythmias. Some of them were scared for their life, hospital emergency visits, the whole bit. And then something made them stop taking it, and their problems went away. And some people were telling me they stopped taking it the day they read my report on August 23rd, and a week or so later, the problem had gone away. Wow. So that's very gratifying.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about some of the other issues in the report. Number one, you talked about rancidity. For me, I think that would be one of the biggest, if not the biggest, if it is rancid. And even if they're going to argue lipid science, whether or not this is rancid or not, we don't know. If it has a possibility of rancidity, shouldn't we be concerned?
I would certainly be concerned. We do not need to take a product like that. There are alternatives. We don't even need to take cod liver oil. We can get vitamin A and D in our diet. We can eat fish. There's many, many ways to get the nutrition that people are taking that supplement for. Not to mention that there's other companies that have different products, some being fresh, some of them being more industrially processed, but I think we can count on most of the better companies not having a rancid oil.
Right. Right. What about the low vitamin D levels that you saw in the report and that you've been hearing from all these people who are taking it for years, and they go get their vitamin D levels tested and they're really low?
That was one of the things that first alerted me to the fact that there was something wrong with the product, because the Weston A Foundation had claimed that the product had extremely high levels of vitamin A and D, say close to 10,000 IU of A in a teaspoon and about 2,000 IU of vitamin D. And these seem to be preposterous levels because they're double what you would find in other cod liver oils. And you're not going to get a doubling of nutrient content from fermenting or any other process. It just doesn't happen. So that didn't make sense to me. Plus the fact that any nutrition textbook will tell you really high levels can be toxic. And it's certainly true that many people today are deficient in vitamins A and D, but there are risks if you go too high. In fact, for many years, I had actually recommended my clients not take the product, not because I knew there was a problem back when, but because their other supplements included A and D, and I was scared people were going to experience toxicity. Mm-hmm. So I'm feeling very blessed that most of my clients went off the product, though at the time it happened for a reason that I didn't quite understand. Mm-hmm. But in terms of the vitamin D testing so low, with a vitamin D test, anything under the level of 30 is considered low. And some Weston A Foundation members who've taken that product faithfully for years were testing at 10 or under. And those people, because they so believe in the product, it's a sacred product, there's so much faith involved. It's like a religion for them. It doesn't occur to them that anything could be wrong with the product. They're coming up with all these theories about their receptor sites aren't working right. And just about all these people, as soon as they start taking vitamin D drops or some other cod liver oil or some other supplement containing vitamin D, their levels start to shoot right up.
That brings up a question I have. Why is this such a sacred cow in this organization? It seems like, and I'm like you, because I just have been drilling down from a perspective of, being a blogger and writing about it. And so as I've researched, the more concerned I get. And one of the big concerns is just, why are people clinging to this so much?
That's a really interesting question. It is almost a religion with a lot of people. I mean, you could talk about the cult of fermented cod liver oil. And David Wetzel is seen as a farmer, as a saint. One blogger who herself had experienced extreme vitamin D deficiency she wrote, "I celebrate you, David Wetzel. You inspire me. I love you," and there's this worship that I really don't understand. But none of it would have happened without the strong endorsement by Sally, because she's got a lot of charisma, she's got a lot of credibility. She did amazing things starting up the Weston A Foundation. And on many issues, she has been correct, and people have just assumed that if she was recommending this product, that it was good, that it had been checked out thoroughly, and people have just not thought to question. And we do need to question authority. Common sense is very important, but common sense these days is quite uncommon.
Yeah. Is there a part of you that felt like if I were in your shoes? I'm just trying to imagine how I would feel in your shoes, because you've been with this organization really since you got your, you worked with Dr. Mary Enig on your dissertation, you really have been with this organization for so long, and not only is this your whole life in terms of your profession, but it's your whole extended family, all your friends. First of all, how hard was that to put this information out there that you knew would not only be divisive, but literally, like, people would tear you apart. I mean, that people would never want to speak to you again.
Yeah, it's been very, very hard, absolutely. And when I wrote the whole soy story, I knew that was a controversial book, but the soy industry is big, it's faceless, it's anonymous. It was not so hard to go after them. And with a lot of people working for the soy industry, it's just a business. They do research during the day, they're well paid, they go home at 5 o'clock, and if somebody shows up with some research that says their stuff's invalid, well, they get paid to do the next study to, continue the discussion. It's just a job for many of those people. And with this whole green pasture fermented cod liver oil issue, many of the people that I considered very close friends believe in that product. So that's been very, very hard. Mm-hmm. And I did have to keep the whole investigation secret for months. I did the same thing with the soy book, because the soy book had to come out, because otherwise, if they knew it was in the making, I think the soy industry might have taken action to suppress it. Mm-hmm. But after it was published, all they could do was do their best to discredit me and hope it would go away.
Well, actually, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, with the fermented cod liver oil expose, the same thing. They're doing their best to discredit it and hoping it will go away and life will go on as usual. People will go back to taking it again, and that will be that.
Yeah, I mean, that was the other thing I heard a lot of people saying was, well, why didn't she go and try to talk to them? And why didn't she try to work it out? And why don't they have mediation? As though it's an emotional problem. And I do get that we're all friends and we all love each other and all that. But to me, it's like, what does mediation have to do with this? Like,
I did try to talk with them, and particularly with Sally. And what people really need to understand is Sally has publicly said to many people, she said, I am the board. The board for many years has been a puppet board. They do what she wants, and if anybody disagrees with something in an important way, that person will get removed sooner or later. So the real issue is talking with Sally, and for whatever reason, her mind is totally made up on that product. She considers it a sacred product, a healing product, and why she's so committed to it, I do not know. But last year we were having dinner together. This was late September, and she's talking about cod liver oil, and she's saying, our cod liver oil, the only one that we love. And she's blushing like my teenage daughter talking about a boyfriend. She's blushing. She loves this product. I don't understand it. And many theories have come forth. Sally's maiden name is Wetzel. The genealogy does not suggest that they're close relatives, at least, but several people have heard her talk about a picture of David Wetzel that reminds her of her grandfather. So maybe there's that feeling that they were meant to come together to invent and promote this product. Maybe she is receiving money from the sales that no one knows about. I don't know that. She has disclosed receiving almost nothing. He's a sponsor at exhibits, of course, at conferences. She makes a minor profit selling the product at her farm. But there are things she did not disclose. For example, David Wetzel gave her 2 cows from his farm in Nebraska, which he drove to her farm in Maryland. And, the fact that he drove them himself, I'm sure that made it much more personal, a generous gift. I don't think there's necessarily corruption there, but it certainly inspires loyalty. Mm-hmm. But this was something not disclosed, so that's a pretty substantial gift. Mm-hmm. So still don't know really why she's so enamored of the product, so enamored, in fact, that she is shutting down any discussion. She's kicking out chapter leaders. People are deciding not to go to the conference in Anaheim, which many of us had looked forward to for months. I just don't understand why she's willing to take down the foundation and all her years of hard work building it over this issue. because there are so many things that I brought up in the report that I think were valid concerns besides the rancidity and the putrefaction and the low vitamin D.
Mm-hmm.
And Sally in the past has said, if it doesn't have high vitamin A and D, we shouldn't be taking it. So it doesn't, but now she's saying that I'm wrong and they should be taking it anyway. Mm-hmm. But the biggest thing I found out that I really thought would alarm people and upset them all was that it's not cod liver oil, it's pollock liver oil. So DNA testing of the liver showed 100% Alaskan pollock. And that's mislabeling. That's pretty much the same thing as Monsanto saying GMO corn is substantially equivalent to organic corn. Well, I don't agree that Monsanto can tell me that. I have my right to know. And I have a right to know that the green pasture fermented cod liver oil is, well, what I found, rancid pollock liver oil. Mm-hmm. So there's a mislabeling there. But rather than say we're concerned about the mislabeling, we want to get this straightened out, which actually people would have accepted and the whole thing would have blown over in no time. Mm-hmm. But instead they immediately came back and said, well, cod and pollock are the same thing. Well, they're not. They're in the same family, but they're not the same. They have a different nutritional profile. And pollock is also substantially cheaper than cod. Mm-hmm. Many people had also thought it was North Atlantic cod because there's the illusion that it's, the same cod liver oil that the Vikings would have taken. Mm-hmm. And then one of the flavors is Oslo orange. So he never actually said North Atlantic cod, but he certainly has given that impression. Yeah. And many people who are knowledgeable and generally do their research, such as Sarah Pope with the Healthy Home Economist, she always thought it was North Atlantic cod, and she has said she doesn't want to eat any fish from the Pacific. So that initially had alarmed her. But she went back on board recommending the product anyway and saying cod and pollock are the same thing. Well, they're not. I mean, research recently came out indicating that chimpanzees are very close relatives to humans. But that doesn't mean I want my daughter marrying a chimpanzee.
Right. What about the trans fats?
That was the shocking thing. Because, see, by the time I found out it was not cod and it was pollock, I had seen a lot of indicators that that was a possibility. That the EPA and DHA ratios, for example, were not congruent with cod. So it might have been pollock, and we eventually found that. By the time I got the evidence, it was not shocking. What shocked me was the trans fats. And the marine oil experts I consulted, and I consulted with quite a few because I wanted to make sure I was really covering this issue correctly. Mm-hmm. I did not want to malign anyone. But there's trans fats in there. 3.22% trans fats, which is higher than is allowed legally in products in Europe. Trans fats. Mary Enig built her career on exposing the dangers of trans fats, and the Weston A. Price Foundation is promoting a product that's 3.22% trans fats. Now, several people have suggested that maybe there are a special kind of trans fats that are only healthy for people, but the evidence is not that. The types, as shown by the laboratory testing, they're coming from vegetable oil. The only question at this point is he adding vegetable oil to his pollock liver oil, either for antioxidant protection or just to dilute the product and, increase his profits? Or is he at this point, say, fermenting a ready-made pollock liver oil? It's a possibility. I can't prove that right now, but it's one of the possibilities.
If that, you mean like he could be fermenting a ready-made oil that had that was cut with vegetable oil, for example.
Yeah, he actually could be buying what he thinks is a pure pollock liver oil that itself has been diluted.
Well, we know that the olive oil controversy in Italy and all over the world, it's very bad there, that they're always cutting the oil there. And in fact, when I went to Italy, it was hilarious because staying with the people there, they would say they would grill. They'd go to the children's school, the PTA meeting, and they'd ask all these questions about what are the children eating and what kind of oil are they getting, what kind of olive oil, and which farm does it come from, and they were because it is so rampant there, the olive oil adulteration.
And there's a similar scandal in Europe and Norway having to do with cod liver oil, because a lot of cod liver oils on the market are actually coming from cod from the Pacific, or it's diluted with other things. So there's concerns in many parts of the food business these days. Mm-hmm. Consumer Reports did an article on the whole fish industry. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of the fish that you would buy at the market will be labeled one thing but be something else. And their headline was, you call it red snapper, the lab says bologna. Mm-hmm. And, funny headline, but really to the point. And
yeah, actually, there's a whole organization, and I forget the name. I'll put it in the notes. There's a whole organization, or if I forget to put it in the notes, ask me in the comments, and I will. That's what they do. Their slogan is like one fish, one name. Like they think you should label every fish with the name, with the species that it is, because this is such a rampant problem.
It is a big problem, and we in the real food community are demanding transparency. We want to know. There's a popular expression for farm to fork, and restaurants farm to fork. And in the fish industry or the fish oil industry, boat to bottle. Mm-hmm. And we want that kind of transparency. Mm-hmm. And there are many people who only buy products where that kind of transparency is made available, such as Wild Run Salmon or Randy Hartnell's Vital Choice. So they have been; those products have been certified in terms of sustainability and in terms of being what they say they are.
Right.
And David Wetzel has used the Marine Stewardship Council name in his website without actually having the right to use that, because to get that kind of authorization, you have to be able to do full boat-to-bottle transparency. And he says he's only using products that are approved by them, but he doesn't name the products. He doesn't name the companies.
And he's taken that off of his website.
Yeah, and they talked to him. The council asked him to deal with that, take it down over a year ago. He absolutely did not act on their request at all. Recently, he finally did it. So I guess I had an effect there.
So there's a few more questions I have. One that I would like you to respond to is, after Sally responded with her response, there was also a response from Chris Masterjohn. And I think between those two things, Sally, had all of her reasons and seemed very reasonable. And then Chris Masterjohn published his response. What did you think of that response? I think you're writing a blog post about it, but or I heard that you were. But why don't you comment on his response?
Sure. He wrote a long article that's just very, very boring, and basically it goes on and on and on, and essentially it says nothing. And it seems designed so that he will not be embarrassed in the future by endorsing the fermented cod liver oil or trashing my research, but at the same time he wants to keep the money flowing into him from Sally and the Weston A. Price Foundation. And he does disclose that he receives some money, but what I think people don't really know is how much money. He has gotten a stupendous amount of money. And that includes $89,000 for his postdoc fellowship. He got a lot of money for the courses that he took before he began his PhD program, and who knows how much that was. It could have been a lot. Sally writes the checks. The board rarely approves all of these things. And he has gotten ongoing money for blogging and speaking and consulting, and Of course, I got money for blogging and speaking as well, so nothing wrong there, and I don't have any reason to think he was getting more than me. But all that money for the postdoc, and he also this fall was set to get at least $30,000 for his lab at Brooklyn College. So there's a lot of money he is making.
Mm-hmm.
So he's protecting those funds.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole long thing he wrote, rather than address rancidity, he starts questioning a definition of rancidity. And he starts speculating that maybe trans fats are coming from some sort of algae or marine organisms or something. And that's just nonsense. And in fact, I investigated most of those things myself. Mm-hmm. I was looking very hard to find a reason that trans fats might legitimately be in that product.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about, really, what I want to know is, well, before I get to that, people may not know this because after they saw the response from Sally and they saw Chris Masterjohn's, a lot of people just kind of like, okay, we're good, everything's fine. Like you said, there's nothing to see here. Let's go back to the way things were. And I think a lot of people in their hearts want things to be okay. They really just want everything to blow over so that we can go back to the way it was. It's kind of like, I kind of feel like it's like if your husband cheated on you and you're supposed to just go back to the way things were, and there is no there anymore after you've been betrayed. So anyway, a lot of people don't know that you were kicked off the board and how that played out. Can you talk about that?
Well, I was kicked out on September 20th, and I was on my way to Mexico. It was a trip that had been planned months before. I was speaking in Monterrey and in San Miguel de Allende. So I was on my way to Mexico, but that seemed to me so perfect because she had been referring to me as one of the three amigos, and the others were David Gumpert, the journalist, investigative, and Dr. Ron Schmidt. So we were the three amigos. And of course, that was intended in a very dismissive and disparaging way. Mm-hmm. But amigos means friends. And I'm going to take that as a compliment. And I do feel that even though I was removed from the board, that I have been a true friend to the members of the foundation, because I had to expose the dangers of this product. I could not have lived with myself without having done this. And it was at huge cost to myself. And I see it very much like a friend will not allow another friend to drive drunk, for example. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have to make hard decisions. You have to show tough love.
Yeah. And suffer great repercussions. But when I'm listening to you, I feel the exact same way that I felt the way when I spoke to Dr. Ron. And that is, on the one hand, before I talked to you, I was thinking she's really a hero because she's willing to risk everything and put herself out there, not only to lose all your money and to lose all your friends, but to be ridiculed, and to be attacked. And to, jeopardize your reputation, everything. Because, the thing is, everybody just wants to, like I said, everybody wants the community to stay together, and everybody wants for us all to get along, and they have this, because it was really great organization, and we really loved it. And, Sally did do so many great things.
Yeah, she and I co-authored a book together, Nourishing Broth, an old-fashioned remedy for the modern world, which is helping a lot of people heal their health problems. Very important project we did together.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But not just that. I mean, just think of all the contributions Sally has made and the fact that she could create this organization that has helped so many people, not to mention just this one, but also Farm to Consumer, Legal Defense Fund. There's all this love for her and all this gratitude. So it is very hard to put yourself out there. But when I first, that's how I was approaching this interview, is just that, I do feel like your behavior has been heroic. But now that I talk to you, what I feel is that if I were in your shoes, I wouldn't have been able to do anything else either.
That's how it felt. I didn't really feel there was a choice. The more I learned, the more I just had to go forward. In retrospect, I think that what would have made my life a whole lot more pleasant over the last year, and certainly my finances would be a whole lot better, is if last fall I had publicly resigned from the Weston A. Foundation board and said my reason was I was concerned about the endorsement of the green pasture products. I could have done that, but it would have been just a little blip. It would have been news for a day, 15 minutes of fame, and then it would have been forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have really found out what the problems were with the product or why people have been endangered. Dr. Ron wouldn't have realized it was the source of his near death from heart failure, and others have had terrible, terrible skin problems and digestive problems, and I could go on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if I had done that, I could have gone and done the work I really love to do, which has a lot to do with humor. Doing that investigation, that took a lot out of me. It's very, very hard work.
Yeah, I believe you. So I have 2 more questions because we're over an hour now, and I want to wrap this up. As much as I enjoy talking to you and hearing about all this, how could this happen? I mean, we have some of the smartest people in this community, just incredibly intelligent people. We've got all the early adopters in this community. Like, these are people who get it. Like, these are people who see through, you know, like you said, the big Monsanto and all that. These are people who really get it. How could this happen?
I think it has to do with hero worship. And a blind worship of certain people's opinions, and I think that was really the case. I mean, fermented cod liver oil has become a sacred food. Taking it has almost become Holy Communion. It's become a religion with many people, and we have to be careful with that. Most heroes do have some flaws. That's human.
Yeah.
And I think we need to be using our own common sense, tune into our own guts. So many people were saying, you know, it's burning my throat, but I know it's a good product because Sally says it's a good product. People were overriding their own common sense. And also there was a concerted effort. Many bloggers were talking about how if you've got a baby or a child, you must give the baby or the child that product because otherwise you weren't doing the best as a mother or father. Mm-hmm. And they were making people feel guilty if they did not think they could afford the expensive product, and they made them feel guilty if their kids spit it up and they didn't find a way to get it down. And Dr. Weston Price himself said that cod liver oil should be used very sparingly, only short-term and in small doses. And he furthermore warned women, moms, he warned the moms that if the baby started to hate the product, the baby probably did not need it. And he did not say one word about fermented cod liver oil. Mm-hmm. Not one word. And the Price-Pottinger Nutrition Foundation went through all, not only nutrition and physical degeneration, of course, but all the archives, all the letters, all the journal articles, and so on. Not one word, but many warnings about rancid cod liver oil.
Right. Okay. The other question I want to ask is there a part of you, this is a weird question and I just thought of it, but I want to ask, like, I would be kind of ashamed. I know why you did it, because you had to do it. You had to. But is there a part of you that was ashamed that you fell for this too?
I fell for it. In the sense that I did not realize there was a problem. I had trusted that the product had been investigated properly. I did not know early on that the product did not even come out until late 2006. So if I had put the made the connection, I would have realized Dr. Marianne never looked at this product because she was not active at that point. She would not have known about it. But I had been assuming that, of course, she knew about the product, that if there was anything wrong, she would have noticed. And then later I thought if there's anything wrong, Chris Masterjohn might have noticed. And I just made the assumption that other people had been looking at it, and I was busy with soy, I was busy with broth, I was busy with many, many projects, and I just assumed that other people had been looking into this. So I didn't really know. But one thing I can tell you is that Sally had told me I should take 3 tablespoons of the product every day. She said women like you and me need to take 3 tablespoons a day to be healthy, productive, and to deal with all the stress we're subject to. And I kind of rolled my eyes because that seemed an excessive dose, and I never did it. So I'm glad that my common sense kicked in, or maybe just that I could not afford the product. I just never took the product. So didn't know.
I think the other thing that occurs to me, and I'm sure is occurring to some of the people listening to you, is you were the vice president. You had concerns for a very long time. And even before you didn't have concerns, if you had questions or people talked about it or whatever, did you, this is kind of crazy when I say it because it's insane. I mean, you're the vice president of this organization. It's almost like you didn't have a voice.
I didn't have a voice, at least with this particular issue. For some reason, anyone who questions Sally about this issue, it's not allowed. Questioning of green pasture is simply not allowed.
Yeah. Well, you're not the first person to say that. All the interviews I've done, it's the same story. So we're seeing a pattern here. And in the pattern that I'm seeing is like you said, not having a voice, not being able to discuss, not being able to ask questions, and the issue of so there is this issue of the board. You called it a puppet board. The issue of this, Sally is the president, and she was not elected. It's her foundation, so she starts it. But there are other organizations where the president, they have different presidents who serve terms, and then they elect new presidents. And definitely boards typically are elected. So Dr. Ron started the new organization that spawned out of the Three Amigos after you were kicked off the board and Dr. Ron was removed as a speaker and a sponsor. How many years? Like 9 years he's been a sponsor of the conference. Which I thought was just fantastic, that he had the guts and the, fortitude to just, start this other organization, this new organization. And especially doing it so quickly on the heels of this.
Yes, I think he's just so happy starting this up and seeing the future for it. And he was in a position to help fund with the startup costs, which I sure as heck wasn't able to do. Mm-hmm. And it's very exciting. We've already got a conference coming up. We've got some great speakers. Nora Gedgaudas is on board with us, and many, many other people. We've got good sponsors and looking forward to good attendance.
Well, the registrations, from what I hear, are rolling in, and I think it's going to be an awesome first conference. It is, I'll put all the information below, but it is in Massachusetts, November 21st, 22nd, and I'm just going to be thrilled to be able to hear all the lectures and see all my friends. And, we are sad that the community is divided. We are sad about that, I think, yeah?
We are, and the idea of this foundation was bringing the paleo, primal, and price communities together, and recognizing that people are different. There's bio-individuality, that for some people, say, a lean protein diet is really their ticket back to health, that people's needs are going to change, that the world has changed a lot since Dr. Price's time, and we're all struggling to find the ways to help people become optimally healthy. We're all learning.
Yeah, we are all learning, and we all are human, and people make mistakes. But the bravery, I think, and the integrity is when you can actually say, "I made a mistake," or "We didn't do something right. Let's fix it." I know it's hard, especially when people's lives are at risk.
Yeah, and actually, people love it when you actually admit you've made a mistake. People have so much more confidence in you if you say that.
Yeah, yeah. And so the other issue to bring up is this whole thing of the board. And so Dr. Ron said the new board will be elected every year at the conference. What is the new name, Kayla? Because they just renamed it.
Paleo Primal Price Foundation.
Okay. Paleo Primal Price Foundation, PPPF, which is kind of cute. So this new organization will be voted on. We will have leaders who have to stay accountable, which is kind of really, really exciting to me. The idea of having checks and balances in an organization, because that's really what it comes down to, is that somebody who's a leader, leaders make mistakes.
Absolutely.
Right? And if you're the only leader that's deciding everything, you'd probably make a lot more mistakes. Right? Like you hear, I don't know where this quote comes from, but there's like some, I think it was like one of those big, not Rockefeller, but one of those guys, they said, you're not that educated or whatever. He says, I have all these people I can call.
Well, that makes perfect sense to me. And I wasn't initially an expert on marine oils, but I sure called every expert who I learned about. And I was not an expert on fermentation, but I sure got an education in fermentation. I called on all the experts in that field, and I called on the experts in vitamin D and other fat-soluble vitamins. And I called on the experts in butter oil. Mm-hmm. So that's how we learn and grow.
Not only that, but Sally has all these experts around her, and Dave Wetzel. It's interesting because I just did an interview with Archie Welch, which is going to come up later in the series, who at Corganic, and they make another cod liver oil, the extra virgin cod liver oil, and their experience has been very different than Green Pastures in that they are really, really listening to their customers. And when their customer says something, they go, okay, maybe we need to change something. Maybe, with their other product, the probiotic, they had to change the probiotic and keep tweaking it until it was really right for these autism spectrum kids that are the core of their business. The people that are the experts aren't just the experts, but they're the members, right?
Yes, and paying attention is so important.
Paying attention, allowing discourse, allowing discussion, having an organization that supports not just the leaders, but the members and the health of the organization. I think that's really the goal.
Yes.
Yeah. So, as bad as it's been, as bad as this whole thing has been, really, Kayla, in a way, what I learned from the failure of my business, it's the really bad things that happen to you sometimes the biggest gifts. Because maybe, if this hadn't happened, we wouldn't get to have now a better organization. And so I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for you because you've really put yourself out there. And like Dr. Ron as well, it's not easy to be the first lone nut out there saying things. Especially having to do this for 9 months and be in secrecy. Oh my gosh. So I just want you to know how much I personally support you, and the reason that I'm joining the new organization, and I decided the moment David Gumpert announced it, as soon as I saw it on his blog, I'm saying I'm going to join the Amigos because I know how hard it is to be out there all alone, and I know. And I feel like, and I know the risk, I didn't know yet, but I had felt they must be taking huge risks. And so I want to support you. I want to support Dr. Ron. I want to support the people who have put themselves out there. And so that's why at the very least, if you feel the way I feel, if people out there, if you feel the way I feel, you should become a member, a founding member. When you become a member, you get all the recordings from the first conference. You don't get to vote unless you're there the Sunday morning. But if you can make it, if you can find a way to make it, come join us and you'll get to vote. It'll be great. Is there anything else you want to say, Kayla?
No, thank you so much, Anne-Marie. The support of people like you, we've gotten tremendous support. And, you know, we, of course, have been attacked viciously, as you know, but the outpouring of support has been amazing.
We're going to have such a great party with the amigos. In fact, we're going to have sombreros, I've heard. We're going to have, like, maybe we'll even have margaritas. I don't know.
Margaritas and chocolate and coffee is allowed.
Yeah, it's going to be great. We're going to have a lot to celebrate. It's been tough. It's been a really, really hard couple of years for a lot of us. But we're going to get to celebrate. So thanks so much. Have a great rest of your evening, and thanks for taking time with us.
Thank you.